Warning, censorship. Warning, censorship. Warning, censorship.
Oh, hi everybody, Ezra Levant here. How you doing? Every day at 12 noon we have a live stream for you. I host it Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Sheila Gunn Reed and David Menzies hosted the other days. As you know, we like to go through the news of the day to show you some of our favorite Rebel News videos and also to talk about things that pop up on social media. Let me just show you a crazy one here. This is a story from, I think, CP24. It's a story about a woman who assaulted a child in a park. And I have to tell you, that sounds unmaternal. Women assaulting children, I mean, sometimes some women do assault their own children, it's true. But it's not very often that women attack kids. Would you agree with me on that, Justin? Like, I know I'm stereotyping here, but it's just, it reminds me of that line in Macbeth where Lady Macbeth was trying to, be bloody-minded, and she said, "Unsex me here." Like she was praying to the spirits to take the womanly, maternal instincts out of her and replace my milk with gall or something. Like she wanted to become a violent man, and it was against her nature. Shakespeare knew that 400 years ago. So I see this headline, a woman... Hi, everybody. I'm so sorry about that. I think we had a little hardware failure here. We have a 6-year-old machine called a TriCaster. Was it a TriCaster failure? Did we have a hiccup? Yeah. I think we got to get a new machine. I mean, it's done great service for 6 years, in use every day, several times a day. Let me know, fellas, if you think that's the problem, because obviously I think this is the second time this has happened, and it's time to replace equipment. We could probably freshen up the set while we're at it, at least for the Ezra Levant Show. Anyway, sorry for the subscribers who were watching when that went down, but it's a piece of hardware we use. It's really the control system for the show. I was showing you a news item on social media. This is from CP24, which is an all-news channel here in Toronto, but I think this is just ubiquitous. It's not specific to Toronto. Take a look at this tweet. A woman is facing charges after she allegedly sexually assaulted a child in a Toronto park 2 months ago, and police say they believe there may be other victims. Now, that's a disturbing headline, and like I say, you don't often hear about women sexually assaulting children in parks, but that's a picture. That's a picture of the woman in question. That's a man. Can you click on the story? This is a real news agency. Woman charged after allegedly sexually assaulting boy, 6, in Toronto Park. Now, I assume the boy is a boy. Can you pump the size a little bit bigger? Perfect. Let's take a look-see. A woman is facing charges after she allegedly sexually assaulted a child in a Toronto park, and police believe there may be other victims. According to police, a 6-year-old boy attended the Walter Saunders Park near Dufferin Street and Eglinton Avenue West. I know where that is. On May 20th, at that time, the boy was sexually assaulted. Oh, my God. As a result of the police investigation, 30-year-old Toronto resident Ruby Ebby was arrested. She is charged with sexual interference with a person on the age of 16, sexual assault. The news release issued on Tuesday, police say investigators believe there may be other victims. Can you call up the police? Can you go to the police website? You know how to do that? Now, you may be detecting something here. That the media is lying to you. And if it were not for that photo, we wouldn't know that they're lying to us, would we? Like, I really haven't heard of a lot of women sexually assaulting children in a park. I'm not saying it never happens. It's just rare. So had I read that news story, without that photo, I would have said, that's weird. That's unusual. A woman sexually assaulting a child in a park. She, her, Ruby, woman. If not for the photo, and that photo, he ain't even trying. I mean, there's a political correctness, there's a mania. In fact, on social media, if you misgender someone, you can be deplatformed. But what's the excuse for CP24 on their own platform saying what they said? Can you give me a little bit more size here? So this is the official news release. Let's see what they say. Sexual assault alert. Ruby Ebby, 33, faces 2 charges. The Toronto Police Service is alerting the public to sexual assault investigation. It is alleged that on Thursday, May 20th, a 6-year-old boy attending Walter Saunders Park was sexually assaulted. Members of the Child and Youth Advocacy investigation. On Tuesday, June 8th, Ruby Ebby, 33, of Toronto, was arrested and charged with sexual interference, sexual assault. She is next scheduled to appear in court on Wednesday, July 21st. Maybe we should send a reporter there. So even the cops are saying she. Investigators believe there may be other victims. Anyone with information is asked to contact police or Crime Stoppers, and then just boilerplate. I feel like we can't trust the media anymore, and I feel like we can't trust the police anymore. How can you know what to be alert for, what to be on guard for if your child was assaulted, if you only read that police report, and if you only read that CP24 report without looking at the picture, you'd be looking for a 33-year-old woman. You would be maybe asking your child, did a woman named Ruby assault you? When it is clearly a man. Now you can say that that man calls himself a woman, but you can't even say he dresses like a woman, at least not if that photo is accurate. You can't trust the media. You can't trust police. You can't trust any authority anymore. It's a kind of gaslighting. And by the way, I don't know if you saw, David Menzies did a report outside of prison, a women's prison. I think it was a rapist was imprisoned in the women's prison, a male rapist who said, I identify as a woman, so they put him in a prison with women. Now, if you're a woman in prison, you probably did something pretty bad, because not a lot of women are sentenced to a custodial sentence. So if you're a woman in prison, you've probably done something bad. But our legal system and our sense of justice and ethics does not include, as part of the punishment, being sexually harassed or even raped in prison by a man claiming to be a woman. I'm very upset by that story. It's not funny. That's where we are as a society. It's crazy. I want to talk about a video we put up last night involving Chris Sky. Chris Sky, as you know, is a colorful character. I've always said he should get a reality TV show, just a camera following him around. He's an unusual guy. He's visually unusual. He's always wears tank tops and whatnot to show off his workout physique. He's got that huge neck tattoo. I asked him about that once, and he explained what it was. He has a equally distinctive wife, the lovely Miss Jenny, as David calls her. And he's if I had to say, besides his visual appearance, what's so unique about him is his stubbornness in opposing lockdown rules. You may have seen viral videos that he himself has recorded, selfie videos, of him refusing to put on a mask, refusing to quarantine. And he has a tremendous confidence and a stubbornness, and so he's been a real lightning rod in fighting against lockdownism. And I would say he is definitely one of the top 5 anti-lockdown activists in the country. Probably the most social media savvy. He doesn't have any particular office or station. He's not like Maxime Bernier or Randy Hillier, who are political leaders. He's just a social media phenomenon. I think by trade he's in the home building business. Anyways, he's a real character. And David Menzies, the Rebbe Award-winning journalist who's really covered our pandemic, led our pandemic coverage, David has covered Chris more than just about anyone else. In fact, I think they even did a little video where the two of them were working out together, because David uses our gym all the time. We have a little gym here in the office. And of course, Chris Guy looks like he works out a lot. So they did, throw a little bit of that B-roll up there if you can. I should tell you, David's pretty fit and pretty strong. He is the most seasoned of the rebels. That's a friendly way of saying old. He's the most seasoned of the rebels, but I think he's one of the strongest rebels. I certainly wouldn't want to have an arm wrestling contest with David. He's stronger than he looks. He's bigger than he looks, and he works out more loyally than anyone else in our company at our gym. So we've covered Chris Guy. We've covered him in a friendly and fair way, much more than any other media, who are all on the lockdownist side of things. So I think that's one of the reasons we're sympathetic to Chris Guy, is because he's an anti-lockdownist, and obviously just because he's such a unusual character. Do we have any B-roll that we can show, even of that workout? Would be great. And I think that Rebel News gave him an audience that he wouldn't have had. Like, he's successful on social media on his own, but I think that we connected him to a more politically active base. He's got Instagram followers, and I'd say he has fans, but we have more a political audience, and we've been cultivating it for 6 years at Rebel News. And I think we've been taking the lockdown more seriously than anyone in the country. As you know, our Fight the Fines project has represented countless people who have received lockdown fines. Any luck with the B-roll, or should I move on to the next point? Don't worry about it. I was just going to show the workout. That would be fun to show. So I like Chris Guy. I can't say I know him well. I probably talked to him for a total of 10 minutes in my life, of which 8 minutes was me asking about his tattoos. But David's gotten to know him fairly well. They had a little workout together, because that's what Chris. Anyway, I just wanted to show that. But a few months ago, some left-wing activists dug up some old social media quotes from Chris Guy. And these are bad faith left-wing activists. They're with an Antifa-affiliated group called, it's a very ironic name, Canadian Anti-Hate Network. They just got a $250,000 grant from Justin Trudeau to go smear conservatives. They took money from a U.S. hate group called the Southern Poverty Law Center to smear conservatives. So Canadian Anti-Hate Network, ironically named, they're the worst folks. And I know this because they smeared me once, and I sued them, and so they made an abject apology online where they admitted they made it all up. So these guys are liars. They're professional liars. They've admitted that they're liars. They take money to lie and smear. So they really are the worst people in the world. But as that Onion meme says, sometimes even the worst people in the world have a point. And they dug up some quotes from Chris Guy Again, this group is the worst group in the world. But I want to show you what they dug up on Chris Sky. For a while, the Zionists try to make the rest of the world believe that the national consciousness of the Jew finds its satisfaction in the creation of a Palestinian state. The Jews again slyly dupe the dumb Goyim. It doesn't even enter their heads to build up a Jewish state in Palestine for the purpose of, like, okay, let's just read a few more here. Professional analysis shows the pumped up myth of the Holocaust, explaining how, with all the gas chambers, in quotes, and crematoriums found in the camps, it would have taken the Nazis over 60 years to murder 5 million Jews. Yes, Jews did die during World War II, but so did every other religion. Can you scroll on to the next one? Over 30 million people were killed in World War II. Some of them were Jewish. Most of them were Catholic, but nice try. 6 million Jews murdered is the biggest lie ever created in the history of fake Jew history. They used 6 million number to support their own biblical prophecy. There were barely 11 million Jews in the entire world at the time. It's pretty pathetic to try and say Hitler got half of them. I'll just read one or two. When Gene Simmons, the Jewish head of KISS, Knights in Satan's Service, name should say it all, is seen on video saying the Gentiles, non-Jews, are here to serve the Jews. So a prominent Jew leading up a band glorifying that they are doing Satan's work is propagating the idea the Jews are masters and we are their slaves. Well, at least we know who he really serves. And, you know, I'm not going to go through it all, but there's comments about blacks. Just scroll through it just a little bit. You know, there's comments about blacks. I don't propose to read it all. And, you know, homophobia, transphobia, whatever. Like, there's a lot of stuff here. Jews in Israel are the gayest people in the world and uber proud of it. So when you're wondering where all these pro-LGBT and transgender laws designed to destroy the family, okay. So you get the feeling, you get the flavor of it. Now here's the thing. Like I say, the Canadian Anti-Hate Network, I don't even like saying their name because it's false advertising. They are professional liars. They're paid to lie. I've read their contract from Stephen Guilbeault. Their job, they paid more than $250,000 from the Liberal government to smear conservatives and file spurious complaints about them. But we've shown you the contract before. They've taken money from the U.S. hate group, the SPLC. They smeared me. I sued them. They apologized and said they made it up. So they're liars. They admit they're liars, but they keep lying because they're making money from it. But that said, is it true about Chris Sky? We know what the Canadian Anti-Hate Network is. They're the worst. But we don't care about them here. We're talking about Chris Sky. So for a year, we've been covering Chris Sky in a very friendly and favorable way. And these are some pretty sketchy comments. And let me tell you this. If these comments were made by a pro-lockdown activist, you don't think I'm going to go on that? You don't think I'm going to show what their character is like? You don't think I'm going to raise questions about that? If these were by a liberal politician, if these were by Theresa Tam, you know, you don't think I'm going to go heavy duty on that? But what do we do? Because we've been covering Chris Sky in a pretty friendly way. In fact, not just covering him in news, but look at that. We had David working out with him. That was sort of fun. That was fun. So a few weeks ago, David, now Chris Sky's been traveling around and we haven't pinned him down in a while because he hasn't been in the city. We covered him when he was, I think we had a reporter covering him in BC, but he hasn't been in Toronto. So he came into our studio. But before that, David Menzies called Chris Sky on the phone and had a phone interview with him and talked to him about these social media posts. What did he have to say about them? Does he disown them? Was it some late night inebriated rant? Did he mean them or was he blowing off steam? Does he wish to disavow them? Or are they really him? Did he even write them at all? So David talked to him on the phone, and Chris Sky stood by them. So a lot of things, it's been a while since we had Chris in studio, so he came in, and David started going through a bunch of things, and Chris Sky was fairly combative. And then David said, look, I want to give you a chance to address these social media posts. And I want to tell you, and David and I, we're thinking about this in advance, give the guy a chance to say, you know what, that's not really me. That's not who I am. That was just some stupid thing I said online. The internet's forever. It's out there. I got it wrong, or I was mad, or I was revved up, or I was drunk, or I didn't, I don't know. Like, those are some pretty rough things to write. But I have to tell you, Chris Sky never struck me as a racist. I mean, he's married to a woman of color. He works with people of all backgrounds. He knows I'm a Jew, I think. I never had it. I mean, he was, we have people here at our office of every color, every race, every religion. And I've just never seen anything that he said or did that would make me think he's, racist or anti-Semitic or whatever. It's tough to be a political operator in Toronto, which is a majority-minority city, if you're racist. And I just have never seen it from Chris Sky. So I thought this will be a chance for David, his friendliest journalist, to basically say, come on, let's hug it out. I think what you said is dumb. Will you agree with me? That's basically how we thought it would go. Give Chris Sky an opportunity to show the world that really, the Chris Sky that we ought to know is the Chris Sky who's fighting for freedom, fighting against tyranny, fighting against lockdowns, colorful character, yeah, but he's malice towards none, love for all. Instead, he doubled down. He really went deep on this Holocaust stuff. I couldn't believe it. I think it's because Chris is just so stubborn. He never wants to give an inch, and that never give an inch psychology is why he's so effective at fighting lockdowns. But when you never give an inch on some dumb thing you wrote 5 years ago, what are you doing? What are you doing investing your entire personal political capital in standing by some really rough stuff? Here, take a look here. Do you have it queued up? Okay, we're not going to play the whole thing because you can see that it's a half-hour video on our site. But I want to show you how David approached it. So David had talked to Chris about a number of other things. And then let me tell you, this was the chance where you would think Chris Sky would say, look, I'm not saying the Holocaust didn't happen. I'm not racist. I don't have a problem with people of different backgrounds. My language was wrong. That's not who I am. I don't know. I think you say something like that, and if you say it, if you mean it, I think people say, all right. But holy moly, you sort of went the other way. Take a look.
Again, moving on to the weird world of social media, and I have to bring this up because it's a thing. We even get questions. Why do you give Chris Sky the time of day, given that he is a Holocaust denier? And
I am not a Holocaust denier. I have been to the concentration camps. How many of you so-called Holocaust proponents have actually gone to Germany, spent hours on a train, hours more on a bus, and then hours more exploring Sachsenhausen concentration camp? I saw where they kept the Jewish people. I saw where they kept the non-Jewish people. The only thing I've said about the Holocaust is when they tell you 6 million people died, that's a biblical reference, and it's about fulfilling a prophecy for the Jews to come home to their homeland. And they've used that reference multiple times in media well before World War II, going back all the way to the early 1900s. So that is not Holocaust denial. And the only other thing I said about World War II that people try to criticize is, yes, we know Jewish people were persecuted. We know they were killed, and it's horrible. But so were 30 million other people during World War II. So we need to remember everybody. And when I said we need to remember everybody, they're like, oh my God, you're a Holocaust denier. It's like when someone says all lives matter, and then someone screams, oh, that means you mean black lives don't matter. No, that's not what it means at all. So anyway, that's complete bull.
Well, Chris, because the internet is forever, I mean, some of those posts from years ago have been republished. Here's one, quote, 6 million Jews were murdered is the biggest lie created in the history of fake Jew history, end quote.
That is-
Why would you say that?
Because 6 million people did not die in the Holocaust. If 6 million...
How many did then?
We have no idea of knowing.
Really?
But for them to claim an exact number when it's completely impossible of knowing, it's completely impossible of knowing. And there's lots of different references, like the World Almanac, that show the population before and after. When Israel was created between 1946 and 1948, with all the stuff that was going on, millions of Jewish people habitated to there. So 6 million people didn't just die, they relocated. So when they say 6 million people, like I said, it's making reference to their biblical prophecy that says once 6 million of us perish, we will get our homeland back. So that's
Chris,
why they chose the number of 6 million, because it's written in their book. There is no way of knowing how many people died in World War II. For someone to go and say 32 million people died in World War II, that's complete hogwash. So for someone to be able to go and say, especially in concentration camps, that this many people died, a specific number, that's complete hogwash. There's no way of knowing how many people died.
Well,
Do we know they were persecuted?
I would dispute
1,000,000%. That's indisputable. Do we know they killed a very large number of people, probably in the millions? Yes. Do we know that they killed 6 million on the dot, or 6 million, that number? No, and nobody can prove that, and that's what I am saying.
Well, Chris, have you ever reached out to Yad Vashem, the Holocaust Remembrance Center in Jerusalem, who has done incredible decades worth of research? I mean, I've been there several times. I remember a curator once saying when they had the original number, it was 18 million, and then they wanted to be bulletproof. So they went through the records over and over, and sometimes people were double, triple counted, and they whittled it down to 6 million. Now, if you had an agenda to make the Holocaust look worse, you would have gone with the 18 million.
Okay, but
so have you ever reached out to the experts in the field?
Oh, okay. So the experts first said there were 18 million, and then the experts then said there were 6 million. So were they right when they said 18
But they
million?
wanted to be bulletproof.
Oh, so they wanted to. So now, because they said they're really, really sure, that means they're 100%. The first it was 18 million. That's triple the number. Now they're really sure that it was 6 million. Does that mean they're 100% sure?
No, but explain the reason. Some people were counted 3 or 4 times.
That's wonderful. So does that mean that they missed any more that could have been double counted, or some people that were counted that weren't really dead? Does that mean that the 6 million number that they came up with is 100%? Can you tell me? Can we contact them right now and they're going to say the 6 million number is 100%, or will they say it's an estimation? Will they say it's our best estimate?
Well, you know, Chris, it's sad.
I asked you a question. Will they say it's 100%, or will they say it's an estimation? When their previous estimation was 18 million.
They believe this is the most accurate figure.
Okay, they believe, so it's not a figure.
Chris,
it's something that they're literally making up, like I said, and they're saying this is our best guess.
But Chris,
a guess is still a guess. A guess is still something you made up. So when you quote me and say you're denying the experts themselves are telling you this is a number that we're making up based on the information we have available. Based on the information we had available, we thought it was 18 million. Now we're guessing it's 6 million. So that's all I'm saying.
Guessing, it's doing decades and decades worth of research.
That's wonderful.
You've gone to some website.
You can say whatever you want. Regardless, you admitted that it's their best guess.
Well, I didn't say guess.
Their best belief. Sorry, a belief is still a guess.
Well, I think based on decades worth of scholarly research.
And now I'm 100% sure that you guys have changed your stripes, because this started about an interview about anti-lockdown, and it turned into let's assassinate the character of Chris Sky and try to make the Jewish community not like him. When I have very high support from the Jewish community, because some of my best friends are Jewish. No, I know exactly what's going on now, David, and now I know why I didn't get contacted by Rebel News for a couple months, and now I also know why you guys got demonetized off of YouTube and you lost all your income, yet somehow you started hiring all these new people, and somehow your station keeps growing. And now when I go on your feeds on Twitter and stuff, it reads more like a mainstream media platform instead of the Rebel News of old. Well, you guys are starting to disappoint me, David.
No, Chris, listen, I
hope you don't edit this out to make it look, to try to make me
Chris,
look bad.
this actually, this attack on me and my organization.
It's not an attack, it's just an observation.
If I may speak, we have always given you a platform. When we see allegations made, I'm giving you, in all fairness, time to respond to those allegations.
And I did. And you keep trying to push the narrative that I'm a denier and trying to push everything. You even tried to push the narrative that it didn't matter that they lied about Ottawa. You tried to pretend like I didn't show you an email. You said, oh, it could have been anything. You're literally feeding every narrative that they're using to attack me right now, and you're playing into it. So, David, I think I'm going to cut this interview at this, and I don't think I'm going to be talking to Rebel News anymore.
Really? Seriously?
Yeah.
Well,
Have a nice day, Dave.
okay, well.
So that's the part I wanted to talk about today. Now, by the way, I think, in fact, later that night he did do an interview with Rebel News downtown. I think Mocha or someone else of our team was down there when he was having a debate. So his boycott of Rebel News lasted, I think, a day. I think David's wrong about where the Nazi numbers come from. And I'm not criticizing David's. I've been to Yad Vashem and I've seen, the Nazis were meticulous accountants. In fact, they were a client of IBM, which was around back then, if you can believe it. The Nazis were, in their German efficiency, they counted censuses of Jews. They were very methodical, counted the deaths in different death camps. And I'm not here to debate the actual number. We could do that another time in another place. I don't think 6 million is supposed to be accurate to 7 significant digits. But I think that Chris Sky is right to say Jews were one group of victims in the Second World War. That's obviously true. I mean, 20 million Russians died. But I don't think that, but his, all lives matter argument, which he leaned on a bit there, that's not what he said in those social media posts. That's just not what he said. But what surprised me the most about that interaction is David put to him, okay, you said these things, and I thought he would say, oh yeah, I thought he would come down a bit. Instead, he doubled down. And I don't think he had the facts at his fingertips, but it's just a weird thing to do when you're presented with sort of, things that are extremist, iffy, Holocaust revisionist. I think you can call some of those things racist statements or anti-Semitic. And his volume went up and his anger went up. His facts didn't go up, but he seemed to double down on the whole thing. I thought that was the wrong approach for his own sake. And I know for a fact that David's purpose really was to take the stinger out. Because no one else would give Chris Sky a chance to explain on his own terms what all those social media posts were about. Other media would just say, oh, that's it. Trial's over. Chris Sky's a racist, anti-Semitic, Holocaust revisionist, whatever. But only Rebel News, because we have that friendly relationship with them, could say, Chris, what are you doing? What's this all about? Giving you a chance to answer it. And, criticizing or attacking David, all right, well, that was BS, but that seemed to so clearly be to avoid the issues. Why not just say, yeah, I don't know what I was doing with that, dabbling with that stuff. That was wrong. It's not who I really am. I have no beef with the Jews. I have no beef with the blacks. I have no, why not just say that? I mean, his particular criticisms of Rebel News were false. He said we hadn't talked to him since YouTube demonetized us. I checked. In fact, we have done 5 interviews with him since that time. I don't even think I need to humor his attacks on Rebel News. We're more like the mainstream media. I don't really know what that means. I know who we are. I'm just trying to figure out who Chris Sky is. I know that a lot of our viewers really like Chris Sky because they see him as a champion of anti-lockdownism. And that's why I like him too. They like Chris Sky because he's stubborn. That's why I like him too. They like him because he's a colorful character like a Kardashian. You just want to watch more because it's riveting. Yeah, me too. That's what we have. Even his personal appearance and that of his wife is unusual. But we are not his PR men. You might think we are because we're supportive of him so much, but we're not, on his payroll. We're not an adjunct to him. And one of the reasons why people trust Rebel News and support us and helped us overcome the Facebook or the YouTube demonetization is precisely because they can trust us to criticize people when they get it wrong, even if they're our friends. Here's what I mean. I mean, Jason Kenney and I have been friends for almost 30 years. But we have been his most vigorous critics in Alberta. Doug Ford sat in this very studio here. He spoke at a Rebel conference called Rebel Live. Doug Ford. And we, I think, are one of his toughest critics in Ontario. Aaron O'Toole, I mean, everyone knows Rebel News is conservative, not big C, but conservative ideologically. Aaron O'Toole isn't. We criticize him. And people say, why are you criticizing Aaron O'Toole? You want Justin Trudeau to win? Why are you criticizing Jason Kenney? Do you want Rachel Notley to win? Why are you criticizing Doug Ford? Do you want the Liberals to win? No, we're criticizing them because we are not an adjunct of a political party. Our job is to tell it like it is, to follow the facts wherever they lead, to tell the other side of the story. And I don't think people would trust us if they thought we were playing favorites. I know, I saw some of the comments, and I saw Chris Sky himself complaining after the interview. I think he misunderstood that interview. That interview was his chance to pull that stinger out, that stinger called, what are you doing getting into Holocaust revisionism? I don't think Chris is an anti-Semite. I just don't think he is, don't think he's a racist. My observations of him show no evidence of that, which is why these social media posts were so startling. But I say again, if Theresa Tam or Bonnie Henry or Dina Hinshaw or whoever, whatever public health official on the lockdown side had made posts questioning, Jews and Holocaust and things like that, you don't think I would be grilling them on that? This was an opportunity for Chris to pull the stinger out and say, yeah, that's not who I am. Listen, that was a dumb thing I said, and I'm not here to enforce a particular worldview. I'm saying, you said these things. Is that who you are? Like, are you a guy who's talking about the Jewish lies? And by the way, I don't even know what that Jewish prophecy that he's talking about in the book. I don't even think he knows what I'm Jewish. I've been reading books for almost 50 years. I don't know what the hell he's talking about. And I sort of don't think he does either. It's his stubbornness that made him dig in on that. Why not just say, look, David, I was asking some questions. It's okay to ask questions. And I think I got carried away because I was going down a rabbit hole online or something. He didn't do that. And in that Chris Sky style, he just sort of ratcheted up and doubled down. I don't think that looks good on him. Our viewers are saying, well, why aren't you standing by Chris Sky? Why are you asking him questions? Same reason we asked Doug Ford questions, Jason Kenney questions, and Aaron O'Toole questions, because we have those questions. Now, it bothers me that the source of these questions came from a bad faith, malicious hate group on the left called the Canadian Anti-Hate Network. Okay, but we're not talking about them. I've already sued them. I've already got them to apologize to me, to admit that they fake things. Been there, done that. What about the actual post that Chris Sky wrote? He's standing by them. I don't think he should. I don't think he's an expert on the Holocaust. I don't think he should become an expert on Jews. I don't think he should learn I don't think he should learn by just reading some Wikipedia pages and then vomiting out these crazy, crazy things. I think it's a really bad look on him. I think it goes to his credibility. I think it goes to his character. I don't know. I know that any other political activist who had said those things would be asked about it. And I want our Rebel viewers to know that we will ask any question of any Canadian. I don't care their title or their status. I don't care if they're called the leader of the Conservative Party or the leader of, there is no one in this country we're afraid of. Just no one. We sue top leaders. I mean, right now we have litigation against Scott Moe, the Premier of Saskatchewan. We've got several lawsuits against Justin Trudeau. We've defended the Christian pastors, or at least Arthur Pawlowski, against Jason Kenney. We've defended churches around this country. We're not afraid of anybody, and that's all we have. That's the only credibility we have, is that we call it like we see it. Anyways, I've spent far too much talking about this. We are interested in what Chris Sky does, but we are not, one of his bros. Yeah, maybe it looked like it when David was working out with him, but we're not going to defend the indefensible. I think some of those social media commentaries were indefensible. We offered him an off-ramp. He didn't take it. He doubled down, and he got mad at David. Can you throw to the end of that interview where David and I sat down? I want to share some of my thoughts that I shared with David instead of me repeating them now. Let me show you what, and by the way, a lot of people who watched that video didn't watch all the way to the end. Take a look at this. This is after Chris stormed out.
Years ago,
We offered him an off-ramp.
Yeah.
He didn't take it. He doubled down.
But I just
and he got
watched.
mad. All this hullabaloo, and Chris walked out, and so I watched a little bit of it in the studio, and I thought, geez, that's weird. And I gave some of my thoughts to David. Here, take a look.
Oh, that thing I wrote years ago. Well, I was just a hothead, or I
Yes.
was stupid. But I just watched the tape of you having an argy-bargy with him, and he sort of doubled down, and then he stormed out. What do you make of that whole thing?
Yeah, like you, Ezra, I like Chris. He's larger than life. He's almost a cartoon figure.
Hey folks, sorry about that. We have a piece of hardware called a TriCaster, and it acted up the other day. I think on Monday, it went down like in the last 3 minutes of the show. Oh, that was a power outage. Sorry, we're having some problems here. And then we had it conked out in the first couple minutes of the show today, and it just conked out again. I think we got to replace that thing ASAP because let's see if we can get that new one in place today. Anyways, it's 12:46. Let's just play 2 minutes of my final. Or are you worried that's going to stress out the TriCaster? Okay, let's play. I just want to play a couple minutes, and I don't want to spend too much time on it, on this. We've already talked about it for half an hour, but I just didn't want to be cut off there by the TriCaster failure. Let's just play a little bit more of my.
A platform. How can you not even have the gonads to address these odious views? And you know what? They're right. First of all, I wanted to find out if he was the author of these posts. He doesn't deny it. Secondly, like you, I was hoping to hear, you know what? I was on a rant. It was late at night and I was inebriated. What have you? But no, he was doubling down on it. And I mean, when you look at the words in his own words, Ezra, 6 million being the biggest lie in the history of fake Jewish history. What does that even mean?
Yeah.
Who's writing the fake Jewish history?
I didn't understand what he was saying about the Jews and their book and 6 million. I don't know what book that is. I mean, I don't read all the Jewish books, but I don't know what that is. You know what I think? Let me tell you what I think happened when you. One of the things I like the best about Chris Sky, and one of the reasons he's been so successful, is he's so stubborn. He does not be pushed back, and that stubbornness, which is probably his, other than his, it's a form of audacity. So just like he won't wear a mask no matter what, just like he won't go to a quarantine hotel no matter what, just like he won't, social distance no matter what, because he has such a sense of personal resolve. When you asked him these questions, and I saw you ask them, you put them in the gentlest way you could put such spicy comments by him. I think that pricked that part of his brain that says, push back, don't give an inch.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I mean, there were other comments. We never got to them, of course, because he left. But, comments that could be looked upon as being anti-black, anti-Muslim, anti-gay.
Okay.
And maybe his opinion has changed, in 4 or 5, 6 years, however old these posts are, Ezra. But, what's important, I think, our role here, we're not cheerleaders for anybody. We're kind of like the umpire behind home plate. We're calling balls and strikes. If it's a hockey analogy, we're the linesman saying onside, offside. And sometimes, I really didn't want to raise this because I like Chris Sky so much. But it's a piece of ugliness, I think.
Yeah.
Look, I'm not Jewish myself, but I think what he said would be deeply offensive to the Jewish community, and it wasn't the only thing. And by the way, Ezra, important thing, this was not a gotcha moment. Several weeks ago, I had a phone conversation, must have been over 20 minutes, on this very subject.
So he knew you were talking about it.
Absolutely. And we also talked about the alleged death threats he's made to Doug Ford and other premiers. This is on the basis of Rob Carbone. Nothing has been proven in a court of law.
Right.
Chris, of course, denies it. But there were so many things to unpack over the last couple of months. And when he said...
This was your first sit down with him in a while.
I mean, I would have interviewed him in Ottawa, but after his speech, he literally ran for the hills because he thought he was about to be arrested by the Ottawa police.
I think one of the reasons why people trust Rebel News so very deeply, and to answer Chris Guy's comment about the money, our funding is 80% crowdfunding. You know that. That's the only way we survive, is our trust.
That's right.
The reason people trust us is because, I mean, Doug Ford sat in this very chair here.
Oh, yeah.
Doug Ford spoke at our Rebel Live conference a few
did.
years ago. People trust us because when Doug Ford goes off course, we criticize him. Jason Kenney and I were very close friends back in the day, but I have to be honest with my viewers and say he's doing things that are very wrong, and I would criticize him if it was Rachel Notley. The reason people trust...
Folks, I apologize for our TriCaster. We're going to get a replacement in today because it's such an important part of our hardware. I think I've exhausted the issue, but I wanted to address it because people are curious, why are you critical of Chris Sky? Aren't you on Team Chris Sky? And the answer is, we're not on Team Chris Sky. We're on Team Rebel Viewer. Whether we're talking to Chris Sky or Aaron O'Toole, he doesn't like to talk to us anymore, or Jason Kenney, who we actually put a question to just the other day, or Doug Ford, who hides from us also, no matter who we talk to, no matter what subject, no matter who we're interviewing, you can know in your bones that we are not holding back because we're friends or because they're on our side. We'll give our side the benefit of the doubt. We won't ask them a gotcha. And I want to emphasize that David Menzies spoke with Chris Sky on the phone at some length about these Holocaust posts. So this was no ambush. It was the opposite. This was a chance for him to come on TV and deal with them. So what you can expect from Rebel News when we're dealing with conservatives or activists on our side of the aisle is that we will be fair and give them the benefit of the doubt. And if we have criticisms, it'll come from that. It won't be the gotcha-style criticisms from the left. And, you know, the TriCaster conked out there, so you didn't see the end of it. But one of the things I said to David at the very end, and you can watch that whole thing on our video, is I think one of the reasons why Chris Sky stormed out and was mad and threatened never to talk to Rebel News again, but literally hours later he did, is I think he loves Rebel News. How could he not? We've given him the best coverage, the fairest coverage of any network. I think he likes David. What's not to like? And I think, you know, as I sort of ham-fistedly said in the original video, the opposite of love is not hate. Did you know that? Love and hate are very closely related. They're passion, they're roiling emotions. The opposite of love is ice, is dispassion, is don't give a damn. The fire's out. And I think Chris Sky loves Rebel News and loves David Menzies. And when David asked him questions that showed David was concerned, and Chris Sky's normal move is to be stubborn and stonewall, and when Chris saw that wasn't really working on David, I think that love turned into, I don't know what that was. I'm not even going to call it rage, panic, I don't know, frustration, discomfort. He stormed out precisely because he likes David. And I'm glad he does. And let the word go out. If you're on the right or the left, you will be asked legitimate questions by Rebel News, and we will follow the facts. And if you're a liberal who does great things, or a conservative who does bad things, we'll cover you accordingly. It's 12:55. How's the TriCaster doing? Is it still working? You're worried about it? We won't throw to any more viz because I think maybe that does it. Let me just read a few more of a few of the comments and we'll wrap it up and let's see if we can literally get a piece of hardware today. Hyper chat from Susan Grant. Any thoughts on John Carpay stepping down? Yes, I like John Carpay. I've known him for more than, I'd say about 30 years. And he stepped down from the head of the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms, the only other important civil liberties group in this country, fighting against lockdowns, because apparently, according to media coverage, he hired a private investigator to tail a judge to see if the judge is breaking lockdown rules. I think that judge may have been actually hearing a case that he was involved in. So that's, for a lawyer to do that is iffy. A lawyer to hire a PI to tail the judge on his own case is iffy, and I can understand why he stepped down. And I can understand why his board insisted on it. We're journalists, we're not lawyers. I am a former lawyer. So we investigate politicians. We've never hunted a judge like that. I don't think judges should be above scrutiny. I think we need to scrutinize judges more. And frankly, I think it's legitimate to check whether or not a judge is following the rules. I think the problem is that John's team were in court as lawyers, and that could plausibly be seen as interfering. So I like John very much. I'm sorry he's hit this bump in the road, but I'm completely certain that John Carpay will be back fighting for freedom, helping Canadians preserve civil liberties. I think this was a mistake on his part, if you're asking me, and I think his board knows it's a mistake too, and I'm sure he regrets it. I think judges should be scrutinized, not by the lawyers in their courts, but by journalists for sure. So I look forward to John getting back into the game really soon. History Club World, do you think that Chris Sky is actually serious in his current dislike a rebel, or is it just a temper tantrum? Also, as a historian, the 6 million death number is based on internal records of the party and other estimates. Could it be off by a little? Yes, but questioning that is too much of a rabbit hole. I think that you're right on all of those points. I think Chris Sky, I've said in our staff meetings, even before this, he ought to have his own reality show. He ought to have someone traveling around with him, filming everything. Him and his wife, Jenny, and their travels and the shenanigans. It is much more interesting than just the Kardashians. And I think Chris Sky does a little bit of performance art. I think there's realness underneath it, but I think he's a master impresario. And that's what I admire about him, that he's deployed that towards civil liberties. But I'm not going to pretend he didn't write those things about the Holocaust. I'm just not going to. And I agree with this writer, History Club World. I've been to Yad Vashem. I've seen the Nazi documentation by country. They did censuses of Jews by country. The Nazis did. I'm not going to get into that. I'm just saying it was really weird to me that Chris Sky got into it and doubled down on it and really pushed back on it so hard when he's not an expert. And frankly, David Menzies isn't an expert on that subject matter either. And I thought Chris Sky made a mistake of making that the battleground. Hyperchat from Rocks 4 Northeast. Stop the division within our already thin freedom lover group. That was just stupid. Divided we lose. Don't you get that? Over half an hour working on more division. What the hell? Well, I'm just talking about the public reaction to our video. This is what we do on these live streams. It's more free-flowing. And it was on my mind. And I was showing you the good faith that Rebel went through. You're right. Splitism is a problem. And that's actually the first half of the interview with Chris Sky, is the splitism between Randy Hillier and Roman Baber and Derek Sloan and Maxime Bernier. And like, if all these folks come, and Belinda Karahalios, if all these folks somehow coalesce together, I think that there would be more effectiveness. But I think there's splitism. I think too many people want to be the boss. I would put David's questions in a different category. If you have this stuff dug up on, and by the way, I want the world to know that once we knew about these statements by Chris Sky, that we weren't just, oh fine, just push that up, sweep that under the rug. I want the world to know that too. Super U tip, J Yogaretnam tipped us $2. Thanks very much. And are there any other comments that I should get to? No. Now, we've had some hardware issues today, folks. I'm really sorry about that. I think we had 3 little breakdowns. We're going to get a new piece of hardware in, which we need because we use that piece of hardware for all our stuff. We didn't get around to other stuff I would throw to it, but I think making the TriCaster do that other work, I don't want to have a bump in the road. I didn't have a chance to talk about the fact that yesterday I received a conviction for my book, The Libranos. The election commissioner himself has convicted me again for my book, The Libranos. I'll put a video up on that today. I actually meant to talk about that a fair bit. I was going to talk about Fauci telling children as young as 3 to wear masks, just crazy stuff. But it's 1 o'clock and we don't have time. I did spend too much time on the Chris Scott thing, I will acknowledge that. And we'll be back with the live streams tomorrow. David and Sheila will be on it, hopefully with a new piece of hardware. And tune into my show tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern. I'm not quite sure what it's going to be on yet, but I'm going to get to work on that. Should we try doing a dog video? We're going to try it. If the system blacks out, folks, you know why. But otherwise, we're going to leave with a dog video curated by Justin. See you later, everybody.